Hey everyone, DJ Kalicha Kid here. We don't have a guest on today's show, but I hope you stay tuned in anyway because I'm still going to be sharing this, and I'll also be sharing with who our guest will be next week, amongst other things. So be sure to stay tuned in after this short music break, and I'll be right back with some information. Thanks. All right, everyone, and we're back. Thanks for staying tuned in. And as a quick reminder, the views expressed on RGV Community Health Hour are for informational purposes only and do not constitute medical advice. Be sure to consult your primary care provider for all your healthcare needs. Break, I don't have a guest today, but I am going to be sharing a lot of information today and playing some, longer music breaks, but hopefully you'll stay tuned. And so to start off with, what I want to mention right now is today on the Edinburgh campus is Biomedical Research Awareness Day. And if you go down to the library lobby, you'll see, Biomedical Research Awareness Day, going to call it BRAD from here on out because that's the acronym they use. Up, you can get win swag. When I came in right before the radio show started, the Vaquero um, mascot was there. And yeah, so be sure to go down there, check it out. It's a really cool booth with cool swag. So I wanted to just inform y'all some more about Biomedical Research Awareness Day, or BRAD. So this is from the BRAD website, bradglobal.org. BRAD is an international outreach program through Americans for Medical Progress that seeks to increase public awareness about animal roles in biomedical research and the resulting medical advancements that benefit both humans and animals. BRAD highlights the importance of animal studies, including those involving non-human, providing excellent animal care. It also builds a research advocate community and showcases biomedical research and laboratory animal care and medicine careers. So you can go to their website to learn more about it. And that was just a little snippet from their website, but like it mentioned that it's a program through Americans for Medical Progress. If you go to the Americans for Medical Progress website, amprogress.org, you can read more about it, and this is what they have about BRAD. BRAD was developed by Dr. Logan France through the Michael D. Hare Fellowship in Public Outreach. It is an initiative committed to educating students and the public on the importance of biomedical research and the humane use of animals. BRAD is held every year on the third Thursday in April. Veterinary schools institution. So it says what? A day to honor, raise awareness of, and pledge support for animals needed for biomedical research. When? Every year on the third Thursday in April. Where? Like I mentioned earlier, veterinary, medical, and elementary schools, research institution, companies, associations, veterinary hospitals, and more around the world. Why? To educate people about medical research and promote, excuse me, and promote support for the compassionate care of animals needed for in a postdoc position, I believe, in um, Australia, and he was working with marsupials there and doing his PhD work. After he graduated, he came back to the States, and when he came back to the States, he had seen that there was, uh, I'd actually like to have Dr. Vanderberg on the story. So what I remember him telling us is that, he moved back to the States, was the chair or director of the chemistry department, I want to say, or some department at some university. And he got wind that the local zoo was getting possums. Um, they are known as the gray short-tailed possum. I don't remember. Scientific name is Monodelphis domestica, or the laboratory possum, is what we call them. And so yeah, he got wind that these possums were being brought to a zoo, and they're native to South America. And the reason they were being brought to the zoo was because they're going to build a dam in South America somewhere, and they're going to flood out an entire area of the region. And so before they Thanks. All right, everyone. Thanks for staying tuned. So, like I mentioned before the music break, I work with laboratory possums. And so, starting from my earliest experience, when I graduated from Texas A&M University Kingsville in 2016, I moved up to the Seattle, Washington area. It's where I've lived most of my adult life. I moved back up to the Seattle, Washington area, which is huge on biomedical research, amongst other things. And so I was trying to get a job at the University of Washington, and I was applying and was getting rejected. So I figured I would just do temporary jobs in in the hopes of just, hey, doing this. And so it basically, when you apply for full-time jobs, it kind of, I guess, prioritizes you to, be looked at more over non-employees. And so the first job, yeah, I want to say it was the first job that I had. The first temporary job that I had at the university was a janitorial type. Help set up their new comparative medicine department. And comparative medicine is where they do animal experiments and animal research. and they call it comparative medicine because we're trying to compare, how doing this research on animals compares to humans and, of course, to other animals as well. And so it was kind of a unique experience because it was a whole new underground facility being built. All the things put together in terms of like their carts. We were washing mouse cages and sanitizing everything. But besides that, before I had worked it's all very clean and sanitary. And so yeah, there were no animals there when I was working there. Like I said, I was literally setting up the underground facility to house the animals. And one of the things that I remember being told was that they had they had beagles, but the beagles were strictly blood donors, they said, which I really found interesting, and I don't remember exactly how or why they had beagles as blood donors, but I found that as an interesting little snippet of what I learned while I was there. But while I was there, like I said, I started to the veil started to get peeled back a little bit in terms of how these animals are treated, and they're treated with the utmost respect. And so the um the possums I work with now, like I said, we have about 1,200 at a steady state, and they get all the love and care in the world. I mean, it's like I said, they get checked every day, fresh food, water, 24-hour veterinary care. Um, their animals, and sometimes they attack each other. If they're in any sort of distress, we separate them. And if they're not wounded that bad, we separate them if they're not that badly wounded. And if they are, then we quickly euthanize them to make sure they're not experiencing pain for very long. But you'd be blown away to see how much love. That's just how it goes. And so we do experiments on our laboratory possums because that's what they're there for. And but like I said, it's all done with the most love and care we can provide. And part of making sure that goal and mission is, the the experiment, proposal needs to go through the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, or also known as the IACUC. And so the IACUCs, I'm going to give you some information about the IACUC. So IACUCs are committees required by federal law at institute. Every research project involving animals must be reviewed and approved by the IACUC. It's not just scientists that are giving scientists the okay to do this work. The IACUC is made up of at least 5 people. One I really want to start with is one that's kind of been, what's the word I'm looking for? Really promoted in the news a lot and talked about a lot because it's a weight loss drug, Ozempic. And so, man, it's such a remarkable story, Ozempic, and I highly recommend that you all go to YouTube. And I think it was Veritasium that did a great video on this. And before I dive into it, just real quick, whenever I was, well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'll just dive into it and talk about that other stuff next, in the next segment. But so just going on, so Gila monsters are a venomous lizard native to the southwestern US, led to the development of Ozempic. Scientists studying the Gila monster noticed that it had a unique protein in its saliva called exendin 4. This compound acts similarly to a human hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, which helps regulate blood sugar by stimulating insulin release and slowing digestion. Unlike the human version, extendin 4 lasts much longer in the body, making it a promising candidate for treating type 2 agonists. One of the most successful examples, semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy. These medications help people control blood sugar levels, lose weight, and lower their risk of heart disease. So yes, a desert-dwelling lizard contributed to a global breakthrough in human health, proving once again how study were validated through research to ensure safe surgeries and recovery. And then, of course, improved nutrition and health monitoring. Research has a great segue into the next part of my show, or our show, because I spent my spring break in College Station, attending the Texas Genetic Society meeting, and also before the meeting was the James E. Womack Memorial Symposium. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that while I was there in College Station. So stay tuned, everyone. Thanks. All right, everyone. Thanks for staying tuned in. So before I go on to the Texas Genetic Society meeting, there was two more things I wanted to say about um, using laboratory animals for research. The first is that it's not even just up to the laboratory and the IACUC to ensure that. So the IACUC, part of when you submit a proposal to the IACUC wants to see that you're using the minimal amount of animals possible that would give you basically the statistical power to make your research relevant, because you can't just use 10 animals, unfortunately. Or maybe you can, depending on how the research is done, depending on how deep, quote unquote deep, you're going into the biology of the animal. But generally you need a fair amount of animals to do the research, so to ensure that the results are consistent and things like that. And so the IACUC's job is also to help reduce the number of animals if possible, or to try to think of alternatives to using animals if possible. So one thing that I know years or 50 years from now is that these quantum computers that they're developing are going to be able to model biological systems like nothing ever has in human history. And so the hope is, and that there's in vivo and in vitro simulation. And so in silico um, models will definitely only get better as time progresses, and it's going to take a lot more training to become fully proficient at whatever they train us at. But for the initial stamp of approval, LAR comes in, watches us work, and then they are also have access to all the labs so they can just badge in at any time and see what we're doing. And so with that, the last thing I want to say about um, these laboratory animals is that I don't know if y'all saw this, but it was all over the news and social media. The company we used to work with with our laboratory is called Colossal Biosciences out of Dallas. And they just released like a week or two ago that they're the company trying to bring back the woolly mammoth. Just unveiled a couple weeks ago that they created woolly mice, like woolly mammoth mice. They're long-haired, cold-tolerant mice, and they basically, knocked in genes and probably even turned off some genes or knocked out some genes in the mice. And they did it to where they created basically tiny woolly mammoths. And of what humans can do these days. Like we're completely genetically modifying these organisms and inserting genes that get them to express and create different phenotypes or different things with their features. And so I'm going to share, I hope most of y'all listening are a part of the UT students Facebook group. And so after the show today, I'll share that video or that link in the group. So be sure to keep an eye out. Or you can also obviously just go to YouTube and look it up as well. But with that, going into the Texas Genetic Society meeting, it, uh, I, an awe-inspiring symposium because James E. Womack was a professor at Texas A&M who studied cattle. It was just so awesome to, because most of the people giving the talk at the symposium were either PhDs that he trained. He trained over 50 PhDs in his career, and also his collaborators, other scientists that he collaborated with in terms of the work they were doing. And so it was just so cool to hear the stories about like, hey, I wanted to Dr. Womack, and I was afraid to ask him because he was studying cattle, and I wanted to work in his lab, but basically stories like that were like, hey, I was interested in these genetics, and he was studying these cattle genetics, but he didn't care. He encouraged me and guided me, and so it was really really cool. Um, So I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Womack in his honor. So Dr. both individual animals and breeds. For example, certain cattle have evolved a stronger defense against bacterial and viral pathogens. Womack wants to understand the genetics behind this because it could allow breeders to develop a healthier herd. This is the topic of his most recent USDA funded research project. Bovine respiratory disease is the most common and costly disease affecting the North American cattle industry. Not all cattle is established by the Wolf Foundation. The Wolf Prize in agriculture is considered by many to be the Nobel Prize within the field of agriculture. So Dr. Womack had such an amazing legacy, and being able to listen to his, like I mentioned, the Texas Genetic Society meeting was also really great because it just had so many different talks and poster presentations about the various, you know, wildlife that they study. And so one of them, I'm not going to read too much about this, but just some top warblers in West Texas, featuring patterns of admixture and SNP phenotype association. So that one was about birds and how these two um, species of birds were creating hybrids in this, where was it, like the region of Texas, in West Texas. And then one of my favorite ones that I got to see was feathers. So seeing how they got these purebred chickens and started breeding them to create various pigmentation patterns on the feathers themselves was really, really cool. And then, of course, just various, there's an endangered and endemic beetle genomic study. I'm telling you, it was literally and birds and cattle and pigs, roosters, I'm sorry, chickens, horses, and it was really, really cool. So I highly, suggest y'all look into it. And so since we're coming up on time here, it's almost time for the show to end. I just want to Might be the last Thursday of the month, man. Spring break kinda threw things in a loop for me since I was gone. The the burden of the cost in terms of receiving treatment for her cancer. So please tune in next week. It's going to be a great show. And I'm really excited to have her back on the show. And also, I hope she talks about her cold capping experience. That's one thing we talked about after our show in October. You know, she was a little bit sad that she didn't get to talk about it, but I'm glad she's going to have the opportunity to come on and share whatever she wants to share with us. So that's all I got, everybody. This is DJ Galicia Kid telling you to stay curious, stay healthy, and let's thrive together. Be sure to tune in next week for a great show and have a great rest of your week, everyone. And that's all I got. So take care until next time.